So episode 4, Diamond's here, everybody. And if you've been really annoyed or just kind of been in this impatient zone over the last couple of weeks of you want to see a little bit more action from the series, well, your wish has been granted. No pun intended on that one, because in this episode we have not only plenty of more information and lore added about the series that I will eventually get into, but also we got a lot more action in this episode. And not only is the action really clean and really crisp, the animation looks phenomenal for these action scenes. We also really get to come back to what it was like to watch Kid Goku fight back in the day with the power pole, with his smaller body, having to really be creative with how he moves around. Like I said in my review last week, this is what I like the most about Daima, in the sense of them having to be kids. Again, wouldn't have been my first choice to make them kids, but since they are kids, I am so glad we're seeing them go back to like, hey, Goku's a kid, so we have to have him fight the way he used to. So he is very much being unique with the way he fights. We're seeing a lot more of that martial arts aspect. He's not just overpowering guys with just screaming and hollering. He's actually having to use his brain, use his combat skills, use the power pole, be very creative with the way he fights. And I'm so glad that we're going back to that, because that's what Dragon Ball was in the beginning. It was martial arts. It was being able to think on your feet. It was being able to use your the world around you and the surroundings about you to fight people that you're having to deal with. And it's finally being drawn back to that. That was one of the things about Daima that a lot of us noticed, at least myself, that when we didn't complain and whine and weren't yelling about something that may eventually come, i.e. the return of Super, and we let this series actually show us what it's going to bring us. It's showing us exactly what original Dragon Ball was about, and it was being creative with the martial arts and this crazy fun adventure. This whole episode really just felt like a giant adventure, and they're in the last episode, we ended off with the fact that Glorio and all them Glorio had his ship stolen, so they had to, now they're on their adventure and they're walking. They have to walk to the Demon King's the Demon King of World 3's castle. So they're on there. We're going to see like a little adventure of them walking and them, running into different things, having to deal with the environment, having to deal with, going like, oh my God, I'm so tired, I'm so thirsty, typical adventure stuff when you're going out and you walk and you're going on your adventure. So it's really cool to see this come back. But there were a couple of things that I noticed as we were going through the episode, and I want to talk about it real fast. The first thing I wanted to point out, well, a couple of things rolled together. One, right in the beginning of the episode, as they're going off, they mentioned, why don't we just fly? And Glorio's like, it's too heavy. Like the atmosphere around this in the third world is so heavy that yes, you can fly, but it will eventually wear you out. It will eventually make you more tired. So you have to be very careful with your flying, which that's going to be a factor later on. I can already tell that that's going to be a major factor later on in the series. I don't know if that's the same issue in like Demon World 2 and 3, but while we remain in Demon World 3, everyone's going to have to be very sparing with how they, use their flying. And while they're going through this, they come across the chasm, they have to jump over the chasm, so they have to fly at this one particular point. But again, pointing note of like, hey, just be careful with your flying. That way you're not abusing it and running out of your stamina and whatnot. While they're flying over the little chasm before they fell into that stuff, right? They're attacked by a giant flying demonic beast. And this is where Glorio shows off. He's actually a very competent fighter. And I think that's actually really good. I don't think we ever questioned that he wasn't competent, but this showcased that he's actually a very, very, very competent fighter. And Goku makes a joke that he might be even stronger than Supreme Kai. And of course, Supreme Kai's like, hey, I'm a competent fighter. I'm a competent fighter. You don't have to just throw shade at me like that. Is Glorio stronger than the Supreme Kai? We don't know, but we do know that Shin's not all that strong. So again, could it, he may just be like, that's he not wanting to admit it, whatever it may be. I think it was a really funny scene. And again, that old school Dragon Ball humor that we saw a lot more of when Goku, back during the OG run of Dragon Ball. Not that Z didn't have humor, but Dragon Ball, when Goku was a kid, had a lot more of that humor. We're seeing it come back in this, and I'm loving it for that factor alone. Again, I have to keep reiterating this. As much as I like Kid Goku as the character, that's my favorite iteration of Goku, I don't think I would have went the route of making them kids for this series, but since they went down the route, I've accepted it. I'm letting it play out. I'm very much enjoying it from this aspect. It makes me feel like I'm watching original Dragon Ball for the first time again. I'm really, really enjoying it so far from that aspect. While after the Glorio fight and everything, they're walking, Goku senses they're about to get ambushed again, and after that, and Goku knocks out the big ogre-looking creature, and afterwards, Glorio's like, how did you know somebody was here? How did you know we were going to get ambushed? And he goes, oh, well, with Ki. I sensed his Ki. Glorio asks, like, what do you mean by ki? And this kind of goes back to the first episode where when Goma and Degasu were talking about them shooting the beams from their hands, and they're like, what is that energy they're doing? And they're like, oh, it must be a form of magic. It must be a form of like light magic, because they don't know what ki is. So apparently, so this kind of confirms it in the new world. They're not using ki of anything. It's magic, or it's either magic or like a weapon that they've created. So ki is not a thing in the demon realm, which is very interesting because, I mean, we see characters like, you know, Piccolo, the Namekians as a whole, even Kai, they all know how to sense ki. So that might be something that they learned once they got out of the demon realm and had to learn about the mortal realm. The mortal realm has this ability to harness that inner energy from within them and use it to do things and shoot blasts and sense characters. So apparently it's not something that happens in the demon world. They have the ability to probably produce ki and, you know, feel ki and sense it, but again, not something they deal with in the demon world. So it's clearly something that the mortal realm really heavily pushes people to learn if they want to learn about, and it's not what the demon realm deals with. So that was really cool because it gives us an insight to all of the characters in the demon realm, how they're going to be very confused when they start seeing Goku and Vegeta and all of them start using energy. And does that mean that we might see Goku teach, and maybe Vegeta and Piccolo too, you know, but are we going to see the main gang, maybe teach Glorio and the girl that we see from the trailers, like, hey, we know she's a part of it too. Are they gonna teach them how to actually harness and use ki? Like, is this gonna be something that becomes a factor in the demon world? Like, if they're gonna start doing this and showing them how to do that, are the demon realm gonna start using ki? Don't know. We have to wait to find out. But Glorio was 100% introduced to it in this moment, so we know that later on Glorio is probably going to bring this up with the concept of ki and how to sense it. And he's probably going to, I feel right now, Glorio is definitely going to be like asking to learn how to sense ki moving forward into the future of these episodes. Along their journey, they stop off at a little medical shop. And while they're there, they're introduced to these things called Medibugs. Now, Glorio knew what they were, so it's clear this is a pretty common thing in the demon realm. And these Medibugs do a bunch of different things, but the two that they pointed out in particular was a revive bug, and which pretty much works just like a sensu bean. And then she mentioned something called a join bug, and they were like the shopkeeper that was there. Shopkeeper and her husband, anyway. The shopkeeper told them, you know, about a join bug, and basically the join bug works. It works like fusion. It allows two characters to consume each half, and they are pulled together like fusion. So, are we going to be seeing fusion in this series? Maybe. I know a couple of friends of mine have kind of discussed it, and then I know a creator on YouTube brought it up, made a video about like, is it possible? Maybe. Not only do we have Kai there, so, you know, the earrings are a possibility, but now we're being introduced to a thing called the join bugs. So, are we going to see fusion period in Daima, and are we going to see maybe different forms of fusion? Like, would the join bugs make Goku and Vegeta come together the way and be Vegito, just like the earrings? Or would the join bug, for some weird reason, almost make them an entirely new fusion overall? I don't think it's going to be that one. If they use the join bugs, it's probably going to be just Vegito if they use them. But could we maybe get introduced to a third iteration of the fusion, because maybe the join bugs do something differently? Maybe. We'll just have to wait and see for that. But it seems like with the introduction of the join bugs, fusion might be a thing that happens in Daima. And if it does, I'm kind of interested to see how it plays out. A miniature, like a mini version of Vegito, or, you know, maybe they do the dance, you know, while they're down there. Maybe they do the dance. However, I do want to maybe go, like, they're probably not going to do the dance, mostly on the fact that Broly seemed to imply that was the first time Vegeta was ever taught the fusion dance, so they're probably not going to do the fusion dance in here. So that's probably why they're going to substitute the join bugs, so they don't have to remove the earrings. However, since people were talking about this, like, hey, in Super, Shin and Kibito were fused back together and then used the Dragon Balls to defuse. What if, you know, again, this is just a little theory before I continue. What if during this series, to not worry about the earrings, you know, Goku uses the join bugs with Vegeta, or even Piccolo? That'd be interesting to see. But let's say he uses the join bugs with Vegeta, and say maybe it's just maybe it's just not enough. Maybe they got to do something else. And maybe Shin gets the idea of like, hey, Kibito, we're not super strong together, but together we have very unique sets of magic that we can use to help Goku. Let's refuse to help them out. We know we can defuse again. So like, it's not that big a, like we're not worried about being stuck together, like we know we can defuse. So maybe this series will kind of force them to refuse through their earrings again, which will make Super a little bit more connect a little bit better from that aspect. Because I know that was an issue, things people brought up. We could see Kibito and Shin refuse together simply because they're introducing another concept to fuse. So fusion seems to be like a possibility, a high possibility in this series. Once they fly, that scene with them flying off on this little seed thing that launches them across the Demon World, that is some old school Dragon Ball humor. I love that. They literally were like basically a giant slingshot and he just shoots them across super far. I think it was 120 kilometers. It reminded me of old school Dragon Ball. It reminded me of like Mercenary Tao taking the pillar and throwing it and then jumping on it and riding it for half across the world, because apparently Tao can do that. That's what it reminded me of. Again, I'm a big fan of Dragon Ball, so when you throw these little things in there that remind me of classic Dragon Ball, it makes me smile, because I'm like it's goofy, it's funny, and that's why I like it, because it's so silly to think of this being a concept and they're using it. So that was really funny to see. And of course the shopkeeper and her husband were very fun characters. They didn't seem to mind that Goku had rounded ears. They didn't even bring it up. So hopefully it kind of that's also, I think, an indication that there are people in the Demon World that don't care about the types of ears. So we're probably going to see more people that are like, hey, we don't really care that Goku's got rounded ears. It is what it is, man. So after they have the ordeal, they keep going, they crash land, keep going. While talking and walking up, they're talking about the Dragon Balls of the Demon Realm. It revealed, it's admitted to Goku that the Demon Realm has Dragon Balls, and he's like, oh, why don't we, they have Dragon Balls here? Why don't we just use those? And Glorio reveals to him like, well, you can't, because the Demon Realm, each world, so there are 3 Demon Worlds, and each world has a Dragon Ball in it. So Demon Realm 1 has a Dragon Ball, Demon Realm 2 has a Dragon Ball, Demon World 3 has a Dragon Ball, and each Dragon Ball is guarded by a Tamagami. And in order to get the Dragon Balls, you have to defeat the Tamagami. And he admits that no one has ever made a wish in the Demon Realm, because in order to basically get all 3 balls together, you have to defeat the Tamagamis in order to do that. And they're extremely strong. So of course that excites Goku. They're like, oh man, strong people, let's go. So that's definitely going to be a factor bringing up into it, which they come up with 2 ideas to use the reason to go after the Dragon Balls. Goku is like, we can use the Dragon Balls to wish us to be back to being normal size again. We can get the Dragon Balls, defeat the Tamagami, get the Dragon Balls, wish to be adults again. And they're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, but we have to remember, we have to rescue Dende. And during that, Glorio mentions like, hey, what if you can't find Dende? What if something happens to Dende? Maybe we can use the Dragon Balls here in the Demon World to rescue Dende, and then you guys can go back to the human world and then use your own Dragon Balls to wish to be human. So like, they're already coming up with different uses of the Dragon Balls moving forward. They're already bringing up different ideas for the Dragon Balls moving forward. We're definitely going to see Goku and the gang fight the Tamagamis. We've seen it in the intro, basically implying that we know it's going to happen because they're going to use the Dragon Balls. We're going to get that fight later on. Again, this episode had plenty of fighting, but obviously not with the Tamagamis. That's like a big later on fight. But during this conversation, Glorio mentioned something that I know a ton of people are going to take out of context. I'm already going to point it out here. So Glorio mentions that while talking to Goku about the Dragon Balls, that he said you could pretty much consider the Dragon Balls of the Demon Realm the original Dragon Balls. Now, before any of you take that far out of context, he's not saying that Neba is the original creator of all Dragon Balls, because these Dragon Balls are not the Super Dragon Balls, and we know the Super Dragon Balls were created, they're the oldest Dragon Balls. The Super Dragon Balls, the planetary size Dragon Balls, are the oldest Dragon Balls. They were created by Zalama. We have no official artwork of him, we have no official mention of him outside of them mentioning it in the creation of these Super Dragon Balls in the story. Neba is not him, and Neba did not create the Super Dragon Balls. Neba, whatever they want to call it, however they pronounce it. He just is the original creator of the Demon Realm Dragon Balls. And when Glorio says you can consider them the original, Glorio is implying that these are basically the Dragon Balls that when the Namekians left the Dragon Realm, the Demon Realm, they used those Dragon Balls as references and the original source in making their own Dragon Balls. So when Guru on Planet Namek creates the Dragon Balls, he basically is basing his entire concept of how to create them from the Demon Realm versions, because they're the original ones of the Demon Realm. Like they're very first, the Demon Realm Dragon Balls are like the very first Dragon Balls that were made post Super Dragon Balls that the Namekians created, and then thus when the Namekians left the Demon Realm, the Namekians on the planet Namek created their own version of those, and then obviously Kami made his own when he came to planet Earth and everything like that. So no, the Demon Realm Dragon Balls are not older than the Super Dragon Balls, because those are even older than that. It literally is straight up saying like, hey, the Demon Realm ones are basically the original that the Namekian ones based theirs off when they left, right? That's what that's implying. Don't get it. I know people are going to be like, but the Namekians came from the Demon Realm and stuff like that. Here's the thing. We don't know anything really else about Zalama and the creation of the Super Dragon Balls. So but we know that the Super Dragon Balls are the original Dragon Balls. So that's why I'm saying don't flip these two around. The Super Dragon Balls are the original Dragon Balls. And then you have the Demon Realm ones, which were basically the progenitors, the originators of the ones that inevitably led to what Guru and Kami create for Earth and Namek. It's Super Dragon Balls, then the Demon Realm Dragon Balls, then the Earth and Namekian ones. That's the order down you want to go with. Hopefully later on, regarding either with Daima or with, well, Daima probably won't introduce it, but later on at some point in the Dragon Ball series as a whole, I hope we get more information about Zalama and the Super Dragon Balls. But do not get it twisted. The Demon Realm ones are not the ones that are the Super Dragon Balls. The Demon Realm ones were created after the Super Dragon Ball ones, and then the Namekians, when they left the Demon Realm, went to the Mortal Realm, they basically based their creation of the Dragon Balls off the Demon Realm ones. That's the direction they're going with the story. So don't go getting it all twisted and whatnot about that. Please don't. Now, had to get all that out there. We're almost done with this, and I can just finally say what I feel. We come up to and we're also introduced towards the end of this episode to the military police of the the Supreme Demon King. So again, they keep pushing that. Dabura was the Grand Supreme King before Goma, and now Goma is, and he controls I don't even remember how they pronounced it in the series, but it's spelled Gandamari, but that's not how they said it in the series. I completely forgot how. But these guys are basically one of my friends here on YouTube actually pointed out. He's like, oh, so kind of like the Red Ribbon Army. They kind of are. The military of the Supreme Demon King basically are like the Red Ribbon Army. And I only say that because the way the Red Ribbon Army treated people on Earth is basically the same how the people here, how the military treats the civilians of at least World 3. We come across them in this village, and they're saying like, hey, King Goma is now the Supreme King. He's also saying, Goma also wants more tributes, because he's saying previously the tributes were too lenient, too lackadaisical, which also makes me think Demon King Dabura must have been a pretty dang good leader that was actually a reasonable Demon King, because these people were like, okay, these are the tributes, we can live with that. And Goma's like, nah, that's too lenient, that's too simple, that's too basic, that's too mediocre. We need to go harder. I gotta charge you people harder. So Goma has already proven to be the tyrannical leader that we kind of assumed he was by episode 1, which this episode I think is going to help lead that story of people rebelling against Goma. Maybe we're going to see a little bit of a rebellion against Goma. We already see it we're introduced to that character that inevitably becomes the character Pansy. Well, she's in her mask and then she takes it off at the end of the episode. But we're introduced to Pansy because she comes out and she's like, back off in the military. You guys are evil. She tries to do all this. She tries to throw like a bomb at them that fell, and they track her. They chase her down, and Goku jumps in to save her, fights off the military, beats them down pretty easily, honestly. Like, we're seeing him jump between buildings, hitting them with the power pole, do all these different techniques, using the power pole, having it extend, retract. Again, classic Dragon Ball fighting style, and it made me happy to see that because this is how Goku fought in the original series, especially when he would use the power pole. He used it to his benefit, and he would use it to, gauge that distance really well. And also it's a really powerful and really strong weapon that basically can't even be broken. It was really nice to see that fighting play a factor into this episode. So it's, again, if you were waiting for action, this episode had tons of it, and it's fantastic to see it again. We got introduced to Pansy at the end of the episode. She pulls off her mask. She doesn't say her name, but she pulls off her mask, and we all see who she is for the first time. And we've known for about a year now, or maybe not a year, but like once they reveal some of the character names, we've known. So Pansy's been officially introduced, and and before I move on, and the last thing I want to talk about, I almost forgot. The military has this little device that in forms of punishment, if you can't pay your tributes or you get caught doing something, at least, or I guess maybe just towards the tribute things, punishment is basically, kept saying like 5 years, 10 years. And I was like, oh, they're going to throw people in jail? I mean, it sucks, but whatever. No, apparently this device is that the punishment is they'll take years from you, because one of the guys said I couldn't pay the full tribute. And so they grab him, attach the device to the back of his collar, and like pull something out of him and into this jar, this lava lamp looking thing. And I guess that's what they mean by the punishment of 5, 10, 15 years. They're pulling life force out of these people and shortening their lives. That's how I'm taking it. And that is crazy to think. And I don't know how that's going to play a factor in our series, but that's definitely going to be something used again later on in the series. I don't know if we're going to see it in the next episode again, but that's definitely going to be something we see play a factor again in the back half of this series for sure. So there's something going on with punishing people, stealing the life energy. Maybe, I don't know yet, theorize, maybe Goma uses this to keep himself young or whatnot. Who knows? But that's definitely going to be something we see later on. All in all, that was all the really important parts about this episode. I don't want you guys to think I'm just glazing over this. I'm really enjoying it because, again, I really enjoy classic Dragon Ball. In terms of story beats and stuff like that, there are things that I can go through with original Dragon Ball and discuss and say what I don't like and did like here and there. But in the terms of the feeling that this show is giving me, it's making me feel very much like I'm watching classic Dragon Ball for the very first time. I love the new lore tidbits that they keep dropping. This episode, again, introduced a little bit more. Again, the biggest thing about this episode was the fact that it gave us more information about the Dragon Balls. Now, again, I keep saying that, I'm sorry. I want to preface this. Glorio is the one that said this. Glorio is the one saying that these would be what you consider the original Dragon Balls. Take that with a grain of salt, because Glorio is not a Namekian, so he does not probably know the full extent of the actual truth of the Dragon Balls. I'm sure he learned and has learned a lot about it, but he probably doesn't know the full truth. So take what Glorio says with a grain of salt. I'm not saying he doesn't know. I'm not saying he hasn't learned. But again, take it with a grain of salt until we get a little bit more information, maybe from Neva, or maybe Shin will learn something, or maybe Piccolo will learn something. Again, Piccolo's a lot of Piccolo's memory stems from Nail, because Nail's was the protector of Guru before Guru passed away, and Nail was absorbed by Piccolo. So remember, Nail spent a lot of time with Guru, so he probably learned a ton about Namekian history, and now he's absorbed with Piccolo. So Piccolo might also be that character that uses as an exposition and this information stuff about the Dragon Balls when we eventually probably realign up with Neva. So take the information given in this episode about the Dragon Balls with a little bit of grain of salt, but what I said earlier is probably the direction they're going with the story. It was great information to learn. It was really important to learn this stuff because, again, it does help you understand more, like, oh, when the Namekians used to live here, this is what they had, and then when they left, they created their own versions based off of this. That's great information to learn. I loved the fact that we spent this episode as basically like a giant adventure episode, them going on an adventure, coming across new things, learning new things, introducing new things, meeting new people, and ending off with very, very good action scenes, very, very good action choreography, great animation all the way through. I'm really enjoying Daima so far. I have not really had any negative feeling towards this series so far, and it's picking up with the action. Again, I didn't need this series to be solid action. I just wanted it to at least eventually get to the point of where it's how original Dragon Ball used to be. A lot of adventure, a lot of story, and a good combination of action mixed well together, and we're starting to see that. So we're picking up, we're getting going, we're seeing the action, we're getting a little bit more here, we're getting closer to them being introduced to the third Demon King. hopefully by next 2 episodes we'll probably get there, and eventually we will see the rest of the crew with Vegeta, Bulma, and all them. Don't worry, we will see them. They're all in the intro. We know they're going to be able to play a factor. But this episode was great. If you want to, this episode had the action you guys have been missing, and we introduced a couple new concepts. Gonna be a factor moving forward. I really liked it. I'm really enjoying this. I can't wait for next week's episode. But this has been my review, and yeah, I really look forward to next week's episode. I hope to learn a little bit more. I hope we get to meet the character of King Kadon. I hope we learn a bit more about Pansy because she was introduced here. And maybe, again, I like the lore, so I hope we get to add a little bit more to this. Looking forward to it very much. But this has been my review for episode 4 of Daima. Went a little bit longer, but we actually had a little bit more in stuff to actually talk about this time around. What did you guys think about the episode? Let me know in the comments below when you get around to watching this, please. Again, as I keep saying and everything, please watch the episode first and then come find my videos and leave it in the comments below. Talk to me about it. Discuss what you liked, didn't like, things you would change, whatever it may be. But I've been Nick Sade. Till next time, everybody. See ya.